Wait. What did you just say? You can read that. The room fell silent, like someone had just dropped a glass in a cathedral. Every man seated around that long, gleaming table froze mid-motion, their expensive pens hovering in the air, their cigars upraised to their lips, their laughter dying into uneasy echoes that clung to the chandelier light dot. It was supposed to be a night of power, a night of profit, a night where signatures would be worth millions. Yet in the middle of that storm of wealth and ego stood a boy, barely 20, soaked from the rain outside, holding nothing but a crumpled backpack and a courage he didn't even know he had. Before we go on, let me ask you this. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your country in the comments below. We'd love to know how far this story travels. And if you believe knowledge is power, hit that like button, because this one will leave you speechless. The man at the head of the table leaned forward, his face half hidden in shadow, his ring glinting beneath the soft gold light. His name was Don Lorenzo Moretti, a legend whispered across the underworld, a man whose handshake sealed fates, whose silence carried more weight than most men's words. His empire stretched from Verona's harbors to the quiet hills of Naples, built on loyalty, blood, and fear. And yet, for the first time in a long time, Lorenzo didn't understand something in front of him. The contract on the table was thick, printed in flawless English legalese, every word sharp, cold, deliberate. Across from him sat 3 foreign investors, smiling to wide, their suits to perfect, their eyes to calm. They spoke of partnerships and trade routes, of international shipping and shared profits. But something in Lorenzo's gut twisted with unease. He could read people better than any book. But the words on that paper, the fine print, the hidden clauses, they danced before his eyes like smoke. He wasn't an uneducated man, far from it. But he'd learned his lessons in the streets, not the universities, in backrooms full of men with knives instead of professors with pens. His English was good enough to impress, but not enough to protect. He glanced at his right-hand man, Enzo, who leaned closer, whispering under his breath, "Boss, it looks clean. A standard deal, 10 years, equal partnership." Lorenzo didn't move, his eyes still scanning the paper, his instincts louder than any whisper. "Equal, you say?" Enzo hesitated. "That's what they claim." Lorenzo's jaw flexed, his pen hovering over the signature line, the room waiting for him to make his mark. When suddenly, from the corner of the room, a voice spoke, soft but firm, breaking the heavy silence like thunder on glass. "Sir, please don't sign that." Heads turned sharply, the investors frowned, and Enzo snapped, "Who said that?" By the door stood a young man, dark-haired, thin, his clothes drenched from the rain, his eyes wide but steady. He looked out of place in that room full of power and perfume, like a stray cat that wandered into a lion's den. Lorenzo's brows arched slightly. "Who are you?" "My name's Amir, sir," the boy stammered, stepping forward slowly, clutching his backpack. I work downstairs, part-time. I clean the office floors sometimes, and I study law at the university." The investors exchanged smirks, one of them chuckling under his breath. "A cleaner. You let janitors in your meetings now." The room filled with muffled laughter, but Lorenzo didn't laugh. He studied the boy carefully, the same way a hawk studies a mouse that dares to look back. "And what makes you think you have something to say about my deal?" he asked, his tone calm, dangerously calm. Amir swallowed, stepping closer, his shoes squeaking on the marble floor. "Because, sir, I just read the first 3 pages while I was wiping the table earlier, and this isn't a partnership contract." The laughter stopped. Amir continued, his voice trembling but gaining strength. "It's a transfer of ownership. The moment you sign this, they take everything, your ports, your fleets, your trade routes, everything you've built." A stillness fell so heavy, you could almost hear the rain slapping the windows outside. The investors stiffened, exchanging nervous glances, one of them speaking up quickly. "This is nonsense. It's a standard or silence," Lorenzo said quietly, and the words sliced through the air like a blade. He turned back to the boy. "Show me." Amir moved closer, pointing at the fine print with trembling fingers. Here, this line, irrevocable transfer of operational control. It means once you sign, you can't undo it. And this clause, exclusive arbitration jurisdiction. It means if they take it to court, it can only be tried in their country, not here. You wouldn't even be able to fight back. Lorenzo's eyes followed the boy's hand, his pulse steady, but his mind burning. The room was so quiet that even the flicker of the chandelier seemed to echo. When Amir finished, he looked up, expecting anger, maybe even punishment. But what he saw instead was something else, respect. Lorenzo leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrow, the hint of a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You're certain?" "Yes, sir," Amir said, his voice almost a whisper now. "They were about to take everything from you." Lorenzo's gaze shifted to the investors, his smile vanishing like smoke in wind. "Is that true?" They began to stammer, one of them waving a hand. "It's a misunderstanding, Mr. Moretti." "Enough," Lorenzo said sharply, his voice low, calm, dangerous. "You think because I can't read a few fancy words, you can rob me in my own house?" The men froze. He rose slowly, every inch of his movement deliberate, power radiating from him like heat. "You walk into my city, sit at my table, drink my wine, and think I wouldn't see through your lies. The only mistake bigger than your arrogance was thinking I eat from a hand that feeds on deceit." No one moved, no one breathed. Then Lorenzo slammed his palm flat on the table, the sound thunderous, making one of the investors flinch so hard his chair toppled. "Get out," he said softly. They didn't hesitate. The three men gathered their papers and stumbled toward the door, their calm gone, their confidence shattered. The room silent except for the rain outside and the slow tap of Lorenzo's ring against the table. When the door shut, Lorenzo turned his eyes back to Amir. The boy stood frozen, drenched and terrified. "You," Lorenzo said, "just saved my empire." Amir blinked, uncertain if he'd heard right. Lorenzo smiled faintly, the first real warmth in his expression all night. "Tell me, Amir, where did you learn to read contracts like that?" Amir hesitated. "I study law, sir. My father used to clean places like this, but he told me, one day, I'd be the one reading the papers the rich ignored." Lorenzo's gaze softened, just for a moment, and then he said, "Your father raised a smart man." Enzo stepped forward, still in shock. "Boss, you're not actually trusting this kid, are you?" Lorenzo turned his head slowly, his tone sharp as glass. "Trust is earned, Enzo, and tonight, he earned more of it than most men I've paid to guard me." Amir lowered his eyes, his voice quiet. "I wasn't trying to impress you, sir. I just didn't want you to lose everything. And that," Lorenzo said, his voice almost gentle now, "is exactly why I will never forget your name." He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small gold pin with his crest engraved on it, and placed it in Amir's hand. "From today, you don't clean floors. You walk them like you belong here." Amir looked at it, his eyes wide, his voice breaking. "Thank you, sir." Lorenzo chuckled softly. "No, Amir, thank you. You reminded me that sometimes power doesn't come from the biggest table in the room. It comes from the smallest voice that dares to speak up." As the boy turned to leave, the men who had laughed at him looked away, unable to meet his eyes, because they all knew they had witnessed something rare, something real. A king had just been humbled by a janitor's son. And as the rain eased outside and the lights flickered over the marble floor, Don Lorenzo Moretti stood by the window, watching the city lights below. He whispered to himself, "Knowledge is loyalty that can't be bought." And somewhere deep inside, for the first time in years, the man who ruled through fear smiled with pride. "So, tell me, what would you have done in that moment? Would you have spoken up, even if it meant risking everything?" Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe, because stories like this, they remind us that courage doesn't wear a suit. It just walks in when the world least expects it.